Hello and welcome to the Golf Zone Ledbetter University Virtual Summit. My name is Lawrence Brotheridge, one of the senior instructors for the Ledbetter Golf Academy for the past, 14 years. And it's my absolute privilege to welcome a dear old friend of mine, Mr. Adam Young. Hi, Adam. Adam is the best-selling author of probably one of the best golf books I've ever read, called The Practice Manual, and is also has a very successful website called Adam Young Golf, where he delivers a lot of cutting-edge coaching instruction for the masses out there. So, Adam, thank you very much for agreeing to join us this evening. How are you doing in Vegas? Is it?
I'm doing very well. Yeah, I'm up in my office at the moment, so I'm safe from everything. But yeah, it's good out here. Everything's pretty normal at the moment.
Very glad to hear you're doing well. And for those of you that have joined us, towards the end of Adam's presentation, there will be an open Q&A. So do please, throughout the presentation, do please ask any questions at all, and we'll get back to you towards the end of the presentation. And hopefully Adam will be able to answer all of your questions. So Adam, today...
Sorry.
Oh, no, yeah.
I was going to say, feel free to ask questions during the webinar as well, and obviously just write them down, and we'll answer as and when we can.
And Adam, just for the kind of the viewers and the listeners out there, what's your kind of background in what it is you're doing, kind of online? Because for me, obviously, having known you for 17 years now, unfortunately. We've been, speaking quite a lot, but for the viewers out there who maybe now kind of been introduced to you, what's kind of your philosophy into golf instruction and golf coaching?
Yeah, I'm very much. I like to be as holistic as possible. I like to look at the technical aspects of the swing. So obviously, being a Ledbetter instructor from 2008 to 2015. Got some great information from David on understanding the swing, cause and effect, how everything fits together, how everything works. And I like to delve into some of the motor learning research, some of it accidentally, experimenting on the lesson tee and seeing what works, what doesn't, and then fitting that in with the science of motor learning and how we learn. I suppose that's how I first started blogging. I blogged on topics of learning rather than topics of the golf swing. Probably a little out of fear as well, but I think it's a little dangerous to put all the swing stuff out there because that can be easily disputed. But some of the stuff on learning was more conversational. But yeah, that's what I wrote the book on as well, the practice manual. The idea of that was for my own lessons, really, to give people a manual for how to learn, so that in the lessons we could spend more time on the what to learn.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And having known you for quite a while now, I mean, we both started off in the Ledbetter kind of certification together, didn't we? Back in the days gone by. And I remember we used to teach a lot of beginners in Austria for 6 months, and then we'd flip and go to Florida and teach a lot of elite juniors. Do you think that's kind of influenced a little bit of your philosophy, your holistic philosophy?
Yeah, it was interesting going through the extremes, right? Because we're not only talking about beginners in Austria, we're talking about people who hadn't developed motor skills.
Yeah.
They couldn't throw or catch a ball in many cases.
Yeah.
Because they love skiing, but they didn't play many ball sports. At least the people we saw. And then you go the other side to Florida, and you'd see all these players who were off scratch and better, and yeah, it was interesting going from those two extremes. Definitely it made me think a lot.
Fantastic. And so today, science of shot shaping.
Yes, so we're going to be looking at, as it says, the science of shot shaping, and that can be hitting straight shots in fades, in draws, or it could be fixing shots as well. And I know a lot of the information in this. I know because there are two different audiences here. There's the average golfer, and I think about 40% of people listening are coaches. So I'm trying to get that nice balance there of throwing enough information here for each of you. So if some of the amateurs are listening in and they're thinking, oh, that's a little bit over my head, don't worry, because I have summaries of each part of this that kind of simplify it down at the end of the day. Because I think that's always good to do, right? Is delve in deep,
Yeah.
but then ultimately you need an actionable piece of advice at the end of it.
Absolutely. I mean, very much looking forward to it.
All right, should we get into it?
Absolutely.
The science of shot shaping. So really the basic stuff here. This is the definition of certain shot shapes. So you have two different types of players. Maybe a player aims down the left side and curves everything from left to right. So that would be more of a fader. And we have the guy, myself, who aims down the right side and draws everything in, or curves everything from right to left. So different patterns will suffer with different errors. Usually the player who curves it from left to right is going to miss more pull shots and slices, and the player who curves it from right to left is going to miss with more pushes and overhooks. You can never get away from misses. So even if you decide to go with a straighter pattern, so say you neutralize everything and on average your middle shot is straight down the line with no curvature, you're still going to have misses. So it's not all about shaping. And that's the point here. What matters more is the end result, not necessarily how you get there. So whether you draw or fade it, what's more important is the size of that dispersion, the consistency of it at the end of the day. And that's what I do with certain players is we'll test different shapes. I'll ask them if they're capable to hit draws and hit fades of different amounts, or even intend to hit a straight shot. And we see which one has the lowest standard deviation. So basically which one is the most consistent, and usually we'll build a strategy around that. So for me, what matters more is the end result. Because if you look at that pattern, those patterns there, you couldn't really tell if someone's drawn or faded it there. It's just, at the end of the day, they're just balls resting on the green. Wherever they've landed and finished, that's all that matters.
Absolutely.
There is a general trend. I mean, you see outliers to this, guys like Bubba Watson who hit big shapes, and even on the television, sometimes they bring up the graphic of how far the ball is curving, and I've seen plenty of 90-foot curvatures, which is what, 30 yards or so. But in general, and this was taken from ping.com, the references at the bottom there. In general, there's a trend for lower amount of curvature per 100 yards of carry. So you can see as a player gets better. So you can see that the 20 handicappers there, they tend to curve the ball maybe 8 to 16 yards per 100 yards of carry. So that's quite a lot of curve. But when you get down to the +4 handicaps, they're looking about 5 yards of curvature per 100 yards of carry. Now, if you hit it 300 yards, that's still 15 yards of curvature overall. So the absolute amount of curvature can be the same for a pro and an amateur because they're hitting at different distances.
Absolutely. And I wonder how many shanks are on there as well, right? I mean, that must curve a lot.
Yeah, we'll talk about the science. We'll talk about the science of shaping it via shanks.
Via shanks.
I know you got that one mastered.
And that one's on. That one's on every 2 months.
So yeah, I mean, I look at things in terms of the results, so how it got there, trajectory, end result, things like that. Then the result is created by the ball flight factors. Now, there are 5 ball flight factors, but there are only 2 that relate to shaping, or 2 main ones. I mean, they all have some kind of influence on the shape, but the 2 main ones for the shape are launch direction, and then we have the spin axis of the ball, and I'll explain those as we go on. So the launch direction, so if that orange line represents our target line, so if the flag was behind that, we could have a ball that launches to the left or to the right of that, as these graphics show here. You do not have to launch the ball dead straight to be a good golfer. Usually most golfers do launch it pretty close to that center line. You don't have to. Basically, if you launch it left, you're going to have to curve it right. And if you launch it right, you're going to have to curve it left to be a functional player. It's as simple as that. But as I say, you don't have to have a 0 launch.
Adam, sorry, just to interject there. Do you think a lot of amateurs actually are even aware of their launch directions.
Nope.
Absolutely not,
really,
right?
no.
Yeah. So I think this is kind of a very important point for a lot of amateurs that would need to understand. Actually, you know what? I do actually need to focus on where I'm actually launching this ball to figure stuff out. But yeah, so I thought, you know, it's a really good graphic there.
Yeah, it can be a tool for improvement as well. I mean, you know, you could, if you're missing to the left, you could just launch everything a little bit more right. I mean, you could go more mechanical and change other things, but a good strategy is just to launch the ball more to the right to a certain extent, as long as they're not trees down the line. But I mean, if a good drill is to just replace that orange line with an alignment stick, and maybe place a noodle over it, swimming noodle, so that you start to become a little bit more aware. Because by the time you look up and you see the ball, it's already probably 50 to 100 yards down there. It might have had some curvature, and also the fact that we're standing off the ball to target line a little bit might impact our perception. Yeah. So spin axis, spin. Every golf ball or every well-struck golf ball will have backspin. So we see that here, the ball flying off, and that spin will have a tilt to it, or not in this case. This is a neutral spin axis. And in the case of a neutral spin axis, let's see if this video loads. Are you seeing the videos okay?
Yes, yeah. Videos are good.
So in the case of a neutral spin axis, where it's just straight up and down, wherever the ball launches, it will just stay straight. So there will be no curvature to the shot as here. So if you're looking down, bird's eye view of the driving range, if you pull it left, if you start it left, right, or straight, it will stay on that path with a neutral spin axis. Now, sometimes when we cut across the ball, maybe the path of the face is offline, as we'll go through a little later, that can tilt the spin axis. Or there are other things, even poor strikes can tilt the spin axis. And that causes curvature with the shot. So in this example, the spin axis tilts to the right. And so all of those launch angles are going to actually curve more to the right. So instead of staying straight like this, they're all going to start to curve. So that will make the left starting shot more functional, but all the other ones become a little bit less functional.
So that's almost like an aeroplane, right? Like with the wings of an aeroplane, as it tilts to the side.
Exactly.
It would then start to turn. Yeah.
Very good analogy, yeah.
Because I'm a slicer.
I know. Power fader.
Power fader, sorry.
So yeah, those are the ball flight laws. So whether you launch it left, right, or center, and whether the ball spins or the tilt of the spin axis to cause the curvature. And these things are caused by the most important part of the swing, which is impact. So everything that ball does is a result of when the club face is in contact with the ball. So I'm zoning in right on that point. And it only lasts, in fact, I'm going to play that again because it's so important. So this is the impact interval. The club touches the ball and it stays in contact for about 3/4 of an inch, depending on how hard you're hitting, how fast the club speed is, different things like that. But that graphic on the right there really highlights it, the most important part of the golf swing. Everything that golf ball does, I like to say the difference between Tiger Woods in 2001 and an 18 handicap resides in that little pink space there. So
can I just interject there? Sorry. So with the cover of the golf ball striking the club face there, I'm sure many amateurs are probably wondering, they probably asked a lot of questions, you know, which golf ball should I be using? Would the cover of the golf ball make any difference with the amount of curve or backspin that you impart on the ball?
It does, yes. I mean, we're going into something I don't know here. I believe the tilt of the spin axis remains the same with soft and harder balls, but certainly the spin rate can change with a higher spinning ball. So, you know, I was testing the Pro V1 versus the AVX, and the AVX is a much lower spinning golf ball. So a lower spinning golf ball actually tends to stay a little straighter because any tilt of the spin axis has less effect when the spin rate is increased. And if you went to an old Bellata, that's why they say the new balls are much easier to keep straighter. The old balls, if you hit a Bellata, any cutting across it, just increases the spin rate so the ball can go more offline.
So the new balls are actually straighter? So for any of my students
Yeah.
out there, you're lucky. Lucky,
if
right?
if they're lower spinning, then yes, they are
Yeah.
straighter and longer as a result of the lower spinning.
There we go. There we go. No excuses now. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry. Carry on.
that's all. So the impact factors, there are 7 impact factors, and I go through that in the Laws of Golf Ledbetter University module that I have. There are 7 impact factors, but the 3 main ones that relate to direction are face direction, swing path, and face strike. And the last one is actually only relevant once we've got a bigger headed club. So I'll go through those impact factors now.
Mm.
So face direction, play this through. Yeah, I do have control of the video. Face direction refers to the orientation of the face. Now this is a 3D thing, so there is a loft component to it as well as the leading edge, but most people will think of the leading edge as being whether a club face is square, as in this example, or whether it's more open or facing to the right, or whether that face is more closed or facing to the left. So obviously very basic information at the moment. We will get much more complicated, don't worry. you'll be bamboozled in a moment. So open, closed, but there's a loft component to that as well, which lots of people don't necessarily think of. Square swing path or swing path refers to the direction the club is moving through impact specifically. So we see that every swing path is going to arc here. And if you look at that curvature, that white line, you can see a gentle curvature, a gentle arc to it. But the moment that it is in contact with the ball, so remember that most important part of the swing, that's what determines what we call the swing path. So that's a square swing path. Hookers of the golf ball, players who play right to left shots, are going to be more in to out like this. So their overall arc is going to be angled more to the right. And then we get slicers, pullers of the golf ball, faders. They're going to have more of an out to in swing path. So we have those 2 different components there, and they are separate. So I've kind of summarized it here. So on the top in the green arrows represent swing path. So that refers to, again, the direction that the club is moving through impact. Face angle on the bottom refers to orientation of the club face. So where that club face is pointing in space. So you could think of it as a car. You have the direction the car is moving and where the car is pointing. Obviously, in 99.9% of cases, the car is moving in the same direction as it's pointing. But if you were to have a crash and that car flips, you could have the car moving in a certain way, but it's pointing in a different direction. And in the golf swing, whenever we hit offline shots, basically we're crashing. We're having the club face facing a different direction to where it's moving.
Yeah.
So this graphic, if we have a square swing path here, so the pink line represents the path the club is moving through impact. So square swing path. And if we also have a square club face, then these are our perfectly square shots or perfectly straight shots. The ball will launch directly online and it won't have any curvature to it either. However, if we change the club face, so if we kept the swing path the same, but the club face was presented more open, it significantly affects the launch. In fact, the club face is much more dominant. You can see here that as that club face, for every 10 degrees that club face opens, the launch is going to move by about 7.5 degrees to the right. So club face has a greater effect. It's almost like club face and launch are magnetically linked.
Yeah.
And if, again, we go to the swing path and club face being square, that ball launches square, it has no spin axis to it. However, in this example here, if we were to change the path, say, for example, we're to cut across it more to the left, like this, so the club face is staying square to the target, but maybe we have an over-the-top move. Effectively, what happens is the club face will rub across the ball. I mean, this happens in any path and face separation, but the club rubs across the ball through impact, and that adds more side spin, or to be more accurate, it tilts the spin axis. Can you
So
see
that
the
plane
video
again,
still?
right? Yeah.
So yeah, sorry, I just had a message saying internet cut out. So it tilts the spin axis. So yeah, the aeroplane, the wings tilt, and in this case, they tilt to the right. And so what will happen is you get a slightly different launch, not much. You know, for every 10 degrees that you swing to the left, the ball will only launch about 2.5 degrees left. But you'll have that cutting across action, which creates the side spin or tilts the spin axis, so that ball will curve. And there's a nice little rule there for if everything else is equal, if you swing more left, the ball's actually going to curve more right. So swing path works on one of those, you know, opposites or game of opposites rule. Now we're going to delve into some more coach level information here. You don't need to know these numbers, but if you are a coach who uses TrackMan or GC Quad or any radar device, any measurement system, this is helpful perhaps. It's nice to even think of the fine lines between good shots and bad shots. So in terms of face to path, whenever there is a separation between face and path, so either you swing a little bit more left than the face, or the face is presented more open or closed to the path, for every 1 degree of separation, a wedge will have 1% of curvature. A 7-iron will have about 2% of curvature. And a driver will have about 4% of curvature. So I know a lot of people are thinking, what does that mean? I don't understand that. Well, I got some numbers for you. If you hit a wedge 100 yards and you present the face 3 degrees open or closed, the ball is going to only curve 3 yards. So it's not a lot. You present the face 3 degrees open or closed, the ball curves 3 yards, nothing. If you did the same 3-degree error with a 7-iron at 150 yards, we now get 9 yards of curvature.
Wow.
And if you did the same with a driver at 250 yards, so you present the face just 3 degrees open or closed, at 250 yards, you get 30 yards of curvature.
Ooh.
So the same face to path separation creates 3 degrees with a wedge, 3 yards with a wedge, 9 yards with a 7-iron, and 30 yards with a driver. So that's why a lot of players say, well, I hit my wedge and my 7-iron straight, but my driver goes off the planet. It might be that you're doing the same error, it's just getting magnified. I mean, the reason for that is a driver has lower spin loft, effectively has lower loft, shallow angle of attack, and so any cutting across it gets magnified effectively.
Yeah.
And in terms of start direction, for every 1 degree of separation, so say you kept the swing path the same and you opened the face will dictate 0.75 of a degree, or basically 75% of the start direction. It does depend on what club you use and other things, but a general rule is 75% of it is face dominated, and the other 25% or 0.25 of a degree is swing path oriented. So to put that into some more practical, more visual terms, if you don't think like numbers like I do, if you had an Iron Byron, so one of those robots, and you kept the face exactly the same every time, so square, but you varied the path by either 1 degree either side, you would hit the ball 9 yards offline at about 250 yards, I think. So it would look like this. So this is keeping the face the same, but changing the path. So not a lot of curvature if you change the path. However, if you were to keep the path the same, but change the face by 1 degree either side, so a little bit more, then that makes a 13-yard offline shot at 250 yards. So on a 25-yard fairway, a tight fairway, changing the path 1 degree either side hits the fairway each time, but change the face will gently miss the fairway. So
big importance there, isn't there?
Yeah, it's important to understand, because I think a lot of amateurs, they're always looking at the path. They think, oh, well, I'm coming over the top and this and that. And those things are important, but really face control, as we'll get into, face control is even more important. If you are a numbers person, I mean, you might want to take a screenshot of this, so I'll give you some time to do that. But these are some algorithms, calculations I've done, and I've corroborated this with my GC Quad as well. So a little bit confusing here, but basically this chart shows you that, or this table shows you that the face is much more dominant when it comes to hitting the ball online or offline. So for every 1 degree change of the path at 250 yards with a driver, you'll get about 9 yards offline and 13 yards offline with a face change of 1 degree. If you were to change the path or face by 4 degrees, that bottom row there, so a 4 degree change would produce 36 yards offline if you were to change the path, but 53 yards offline if you were to change the face. So basically there, yeah, I mean, all of them are huge, right? For what, if you think about it, oh my God, I can miss the fairway with just 1 degree or 2 degrees of change.
Exactly.
But the face is far more influential because it's more influential on the start direction. So I say face is king. And according to those numbers, face is 50% more influential to the end result, more influential than path to the end result. So whenever I'm looking at, or whenever someone's hitting offline shots, I constantly remind them that, look, we got to improve control of the face here. There's lots of people are trying to do things to change their path rather than looking at the face angle.
Absolutely. And how would you go about developing that skill, Adam? Say you know, an amateur or someone coming in, and is there anything that you would do in terms of a practice plan or a way to practice control?
Definitely. If there are clear patterns, so if you get a guy who comes to you and you look at his 100 shot or 20 shot pattern and he's hitting everyone either down the center of the fairway or they're flaring out right.
Yeah.
If we want to center, they're basically not using the left side of the course. So if we want to center that shot pattern a little bit more over the center of the fairway, we'd look at a pattern change. So that might be a technical thing. So, you know, you can look at things such as the grip influences the face. You could look at wrist angles at the top if you want to get more complicated. You could look at forearm supination at the bottom if you want to go that route as well. So there are plenty of options to change the face. And that changes the pattern. But if we're talking about consistency, I mean, there are so many different routes we can go with consistency, but I like to also, in all of my players, develop the skill of face control through feel. And how I do this is through varying difficulties of tasks. So for example, I actually get players to explore the spectrum a little bit. So if you imagine 0 is the goal or square club face. It's not always the goal, but 0 is a square club face, and then you could have up to say 5 degrees right and 5 degrees left. And what I will do is I will actually, even with a complete beginner, I'll just say to a person, can you hit 10 shots to the right? Now can you hit 10 shots to the left? And I'll explain to them, it's just presenting the face differently. And if you want, you can start with a different club face address, just so we're building a feel, we're building awareness of where the club face is at impact, importantly, and even how it feels throughout the swing. Once players get good at that simple task of can I hit it right and left, we add on more parameters. So I might say, now can you hit a small right and then a bigger right? And then a small left and a bigger left. So we've got 4 shapes. I might even throw one in between. And then when we get all the way, so these kind of tasks progress all the way up to, you know, at my level, I'm working with a GC quad, and I can see the face to the nearest degree. And I'm actually trying to hit different windows. So I'm trying to hit between 0 and 2 degrees right, then 2 to 4 degrees right, then 4 to 6 degrees right. And I do the same for left. And I play a little game. How many shots does it take me to complete all the windows? And so that's a good indicator of a player's skill level. Because if it takes them 10 shots to hit 10 different windows, they've got incredible control of that club face. And now that's really beneficial. People will say, well, why would you be practicing poor shots?
I was going to say, I was going to say, I think a lot of people when they are up on the range, you know, they almost get a little bit of a shock. When you say, listen, can you actually close the face and intentionally do this? And it's so far out of the kind of normal comfort zone, isn't it, to actually try and practice these varieties? But as you quite rightly said, you know, like if you're able to scale it, narrow down that skill, I mean, it does pay huge dividends later when you're out on the golf course and you might close the face slightly and it goes left. you won't have to go through kind of like 3 or 4 different swing thoughts to kind of repeat it, right?
Exactly. I mean, there are two different things, two different topics there. One is how to practice. I know we get told that perfect practice makes perfect, and certainly that can be part of your regime. But what I found in my informal studies is that if players actually experiment with hitting left and right intentionally, not accidentally, intentionally, and they build that feel for it, they actually, when it comes to calibrating a centered shot again, they are much more capable of that, because calibration is literally just balancing those feels. So when I'm trying to hit a 0 club face on TrackMan or GC Quad, I'm basically using feels. I'm saying to myself, oh, it needs to be a little bit more open. Oh, that was too much. I need to close it a little bit more. And I'm just constantly back and forthing until I get that desired club face. And that can only be done if you've explored the scale first.
Exactly. It's almost, you know, because I sometimes compare that to, I think everyone's maybe too young for this, but you know, in the old stereos where you had the volumizer, which was like a round button, and some volumizers were very sensitive, so you just turn it a little bit and go up at like 50 clicks. You know, so the first time you try and kind of turn it up, you turn it up a lot, and you turn it up like 1,000 clicks, right? And the sound goes off. So being able to kind of understand, okay, well, how much do I need to do it? You know, you need to play around with it, right?
Exactly. I mean, everybody, or at least most people, when they hit an offline shot, they kind of know what to fix. But doing that at the right dosage, which is what you say, and you get some people, like you say, some people, they might have a sticky dial, so it's really, really difficult to change, and then it kind of jumps. And other players, like you said, they might be a little bit more sensitive, so they try and change it. Usually juniors or beginners are more like that. You ask them to change it by a degree and they change it by 10, whereas actually most amateurs are very, very sticky. So so yeah, improving your dosage or understanding how much to change is going to be improved with that variability practice, which helps obviously when you come out onto the golf course, you hit an offline shot, you need to make a change, and you need to implement the dosage as well.
Oh, brilliant.
So the last factor, so we've gone over swing path, we've gone over club face. The last factor was face strike. And this relates more to when you have a bigger headed club, so something with a bigger center of mass, so a hybrid, it might start to come in, definitely a 3-wood and certainly a driver. There's something called gear effect. Now this is a little bit more advanced, but for many amateurs won't have heard of this, but this is really important for you. So if you've ever been on the range and hit a bad shot, or sometimes you see pros do this and their hand comes off the club, basically you felt a lot of twisting at impact. Well, that twisting is caused by an off-center hit. So here we see a heel strike, and the club in a heel strike will twist around its center of mass. Basically, it'll close, and you can see that club face close dramatically there. Now, that's not you doing it. It's not you twisting it. It's the strike. And the opposite is true. If we hit the toe of the club will actually twist open through impact. So if you watch the club head now, you see it twist open. And this is one of those really counterintuitive things. Or this one isn't. If you have a centered strike, the forces run directly through the center of mass of the ball. These are great feeling shots. The ball is just going to go straight out. It's going to go off nicely. You're not going to feel any twisting. So these are our pure feeling shots, basically. However, if we're to hit the toe of the club, what happens is you get the force of the ball. It doesn't run through the center of mass of the club. And so what that means is that club is then going to twist around that red spot. It's going to twist around the center of mass, much like if you push on a merry-go-round, a child's merry-go-round, it'll twist around. And so that twisting open, as we saw, a toe hit goes a twisting open of the face. And during the contact, the club head and the ball act like gears or cogs. That's why they call it gear effect. And so you can imagine as that club is twisting open, that actually produces a counter twist on the golf ball. So it'll actually tilt the spin axis to the left. And so we see this in real close detail here. The reason for that is as that club opens, the face effectively rubs across the ball through impact. And you can imagine if you're rubbing across it in that way, that point of the face is moving to the right, that produces the left twist on the ball. So gear effect can be summarized. It is a little bit more in-depth, more nuanced to this, but all else being equal, if you hit the toe side or the green side there, you're going to produce more draw or less slice, all else being equal. And the opposite is true. Anything off the heel tends to be more fade or less hook, all else being equal. It's more nuanced than that. If you get into extremes, it can kind of back up on itself a little bit.
So Adam, I'm sure a lot of amateurs out there have purchased kind of drivers, right? The new drivers that have come out on the market. And one of the most interesting ones I think that I've seen in the last 5 years was TaylorMade's kind of twist face technology. Mm-hmm. So the face is slightly twisted, so towards the toe it's a little bit more kind of added loft. Towards the heel it's a little bit more de-lofted, so the degree's a little down, so the spread on that face. Is that anything new? And does it help?
Roll. Yeah, it helps definitely. So bulge and roll. If you have a close look at your driver and you look from a bird's eye point of view at the face, you'll see it's convex in nature. So it bulges out, and we call it bulge and roll because even from low to high, it will have a curvature to it. And those are there to limit the effects of gear effect. So if you had a perfectly square or flat club face, any toe shot would actually go off the planet left. So by making the face more curved, any toe shot now, it still curves to the left, but it's more likely to hit the fairway. So if you hit 100 balls, instead of all of them missing left, at least 50% of them now will hit the fairway. So basically minimizes gear effect. What they did with twist face was kind of angle it across the face a little bit, so it helps any low shots to lower the spin rate, and any high shots to increase the spin rate back up again. There's some other nuanced things in there, but definitely your driver will have it. Everybody's driver does have it. So manufacturers are constantly tinkering with bulge, roll, moment of inertia to try and limit the effects of gear effect. But it's always going to be there. So it's important with gear effect to understand, or at least to identify when you hit a bad shot. Was it the face, was it the path, or was it a poor strike? I mean, for most of my bad shots with the driver, it's due to face strike. And it's so sensitive. I mean, it could be, I could hit it 20 yards left. In fact, I did a little, I was practicing the other day and I hit one pure out of the center. I felt no twisting. The ball went straight down the line. And then I hit the next one and it was, GC Quad said it was 10 millimeters out of the toe, which isn't much. And the ball went 25 yards left.
Yeah.
And so just everything else was the same.
Yeah, and I think you make a great point there as well, because when most of us are watching golf on TV and we see some of the best ball strikers in the world, like Rory, for instance, miss a fairway, we're quick to pick out certain faults in their swing, right, on that particular tee, when in fact it could just be millimeters into the toe or millimeters into the heel. It could have lost a little bit of distance by hitting it a little bit low on the face, a little bit high on the face. So, it's often so often overlooked, isn't it? This part of the game.
I think it avoids making you having to overhaul your swing, because I've done plenty of blog posts on the differences between a toe and a heel shot. I did one with Pranav, and I asked Pranav to hit the toe, hit the heel. We filmed this swing, put them side by side, and they're identical. And I see that every day on the lesson tee. So you don't have to make a huge mechanical change to move that strike across the face in a meaningful amount. But it's important to note as well, gear effect, this is, as I said, a bigger headed club issue. It is not there with irons, or it's very, very minimal with irons. So the bigger the head gets, basically the more the center of mass moves behind the face, then gear effect gets maximized. So don't worry about this with the iron so much. It's more of a hybrid three-word driver issue.
So what would happen to the shot shape then more so with the irons if you hit it off the toe? For those amateurs listening,
it actually stays very similar to where the club face is looking. If anything, if it's an extreme toe, it might go a little bit more to the right. You might get more of a push shot. So we could talk for an hour on gear effect alone and how it changes.
I don't think we've got enough time.
But yeah, it can actually start to change a little bit with irons and become more push up. You see that with the driver as well. A little bit off the toe is a small hook. A little bigger off the toe is a bigger hook. Even more off the toe becomes a smaller hook, and then really extremely off the toe actually starts to become a push because we get slippage across the face. So again, we're going into the weeds here, but hopefully it's valuable to people. I know that would be to me if I was a coach listening in. But for amateurs, this picture is a good summary here.
Hit the middle, basically.
Yeah, just hit the middle. Don't worry about it. Try and reduce that twisting. So so yeah, with those three factors, we have swing path, face angle, and we can even see face strike here. I've simulated a toe shot. They can all compete against each other, or you can get certain mixes of these. I'm reluctant to say the ideal is a square swing path, square club face, square contact. I think if you do that, great, but it's not needed to play good golf. But certainly we want to avoid bags of errors like this. So in this example, we might have a swing path that's left. We have a face angle that's really open to it, which will produce a huge slice. And then this player may have figured out that, oh, if I hit it out the toe, maybe not consciously, but if I hit out the toe, I get toe gearing that hooks it back in, which basically neutralizes the swing path and face angle. And so they might get a shot that goes out there pretty straight, but it's just got no power to it. So on TrackMan or GC Quad, you'd see a low smash factor or efficiency ratio. So this is why it's important to, get the trained eye of a professional. But you can do a lot of this with, face spray. Get a Dr. Scholl's, a can Dr. Scholl's foot spray or CVS or Dactarin. Spray the face so you can check the strike. And then from there, once you've got reasonably good strikes, you can start to tinker with face and path. All right, so those the summary of those three impact factors. 3 out of the 7 most important are face direction, swing path, and face strike. And to reiterate, the most important part of the swing is that purple part. Anything you do in the swing, whether it's a grip change, even a strategy change, will only improve you as far as it affects that pink area there. So that's important to remember. That's probably my main point to golfers. All right, when it comes to shaping shots, we're almost all up to 45 minutes already, but I think when it comes to shaping shots intentionally, and some basic rules here, if you want to draw the ball, you have to have a swing path that's from in to out, barring gear effect. With an iron, you've got to have a swing path that is to the right in order to curve the ball to the left. And then ideally, the club face is going to point somewhere in this white zone here, so between the swing path and the ball to target line. Now, with a 7 iron, if you want to get more specific and drill down on this, with a 7 iron, usually we're looking for 50% between the swing path and the target line. So in other words, if you had a path that was 4 degrees to the right, then you'd want that face to look 2 degrees right at impact. So it's closed to the path, but it's still actually pointing right at the target. Now with a wedge, because there's less curvature with a wedge, as we mentioned, there's only 1% curvature, you might want the wedge face to be a little bit more closed to the swing path. Still going to be open to the target line, but it's basically going to point squarer. And with a driver, because there's more curvature, you'd want the face to be a little bit more open or less closed to the swing path, more open to the ball to target line. So I know lots of people will be confused by that, but basically take a screenshot of this graphic. You'll understand that. Again, you don't have to drill down into the exact numbers. It can just be, simple rules.
Sensations, right?
Yeah, exactly. And for a fade, the opposite would be true. Swing path needs to be to the left to fade it, to hit a functional fade, and face needs to be pointing somewhere in the white area. Again, that is functional information for most amateurs to play. That's what I play with, really. If you want to drill down more specifically, 7 iron would need to look here, wedge would need to look here, driver would need to look here.
So for those listening who are kind of chronic pullers or slicers, the kind of the average golfer's kind of issue, what would your advice be to them? Would it be to modify the path or to try and modify and gain control of the face?
If the pattern is pull and slice, we'd have to look at changing the consistency of club face presentation. If they were a puller and a slicer and they say, I want to draw the ball, we're going to have to change the path. But I would also have a discussion with that person and say, well, look, if you change from a fader to a drawer, you're just swapping a set of problems. You're changing from pull and slice to a push and a hook. You can't get rid of problems in golf. You're basically at the mercy of what your club face presentation is. So I usually urge players to build more club face awareness, more club face skill, and obviously fix any glaringly obvious patterns. But I don't like to see the path hugely offline. But as we'll see a little later on, it can be, and you can still hit really functional shots with an offline swing.
Perfect, thanks.
So some general rules, almost a summary of all this. The shot shape is a product of the start direction and the curvature, spin axis. So it's very, very simple. The impact factors that relate to those are face direction, swing path, and strike location with the bigger headed clubs. And face is king. If that's all you get from this, face is king, we've done our job.
That's it.
Levels of understanding. So when I'm teaching beginners, I know I suppose ethically we should give more accurate information, but as coaches, we also have to give information and we have to pitch it at a level that player can understand. And so with most beginners, I'll tell them, look, this isn't perfectly accurate, but for the purposes of playing at this moment in time, think of face controls direction. Think of it as simple as that, because all else being equal, if the club face is more right or left, the end result is going to be more right or left. So for that player at this moment, we don't want to bring path in. It might confuse them a little bit. Just say face controls direction. When we get to intermediate, so this may be even an hour later, or sometimes up to a week later, or if they're maybe a slower learner, we might say, okay, the ball starts on the face. So wherever that ball launches, that's a good indication of your club face.
Yeah.
And it curves away from the path. Again, it's not 100% accurate in terms of the maths, but it's a good enough summary of the physics of impact. So a player can then hit a shot and they say, oh, my ball started straight, but then it sliced off right. That must mean my face was straight, but the ball curves away from the path, it curved right. Okay, I must have swung to the left. So they can start to, be Sherlock Holmes and start to deduce right information from their ball flight, or better information. Now, when you get to my level and when I'm instructing, we might want to be much more advanced, and we might want to say the ball starts between the path and the face. And it starts 75% closer to the face, depending on the club. And then it curves away from the path in 1, 2, or 4% increments, depending on whether that's a wedge, 7-iron, or driver. So that's how I'm thinking. But we have devices usually at this level that calculate all those things for us and give us exact information. I'll be honest, when I'm playing, I usually stick to the intermediate level. I'm not thinking of things too in depth when I'm playing, which is important. General rules again, so for a fade, you need the path to be left and you need the face open to it. It's as simple as that. For a draw, you need the path to be right or into out. I obviously flip these for left-handers. Many apologies for any left-handers listening. I should have been more into out instead of left and rights. And the face needs to be close to it. And with a driver, you need less face-to-path difference because of the increased curvature, and a wedge needs a bigger face-to-path difference to hit functional shots. The face does not need to be square to play functional golf. So in fact, if you want to draw the ball right to left or fade the ball left to right, having a square face will go against you because you'll end up hitting hooks or slices instead of fades and draws. So the face needs to be in that little window between the path and the ball to target line. Again, general rules, really simplified. All else being equal, if a club face is more left, the result is more left. This is how I teach it. All of that stuff can be simplified into this. If the club face is more left, the result will be more left. All else being equal. Obviously, if path changes, then it can be different. And all else being equal, if the path is more left, the result will actually be more right. So the path is one of those opposite rules. Golf is a game of opposites. It's never more true when it comes to swing path. And that's why lots of golfers suffer with self-diagnosis, because they see that ball curve off to the right. Usually instinct says swing more left, and that can exacerbate the issue. So fixing a slice, close the face. If you want to turn that slice into a fade, close the face. How do you know if you've done it too much? It becomes a pull. But we're always playing this game of too much, too little. So close the face enough to turn it into a fade, but not so much that it turns into a pull. That's one option. The other option is you can make the path more in to out, and then you'd have to recalibrate the face. Usually that change is much more difficult. So I try to avoid that if possible, for many reasons, psychological as well as physical. But yeah, if you want to fix a slice and turn it into an alternate shape, you're going to have to delve into path. And the opposite, if you're fixing a hook, this is me. If I suffer with anything, I tend to suffer with the hook. So what do? Even at my level, I just open the face more. If that ball is hooking left one day, I just open the face more. It can just be 1 or 2 degrees difference, can turn that from a non-playable shot into a playable shot.
Yeah, it's functional, right?
Exactly. And how do you know if you've done it too much? Well, it's going to become a push. So you get just playing that dosage game again. If I wanted to straighten out the shot and hit straighter shots on average, I would make a change to the path and then I recalibrate the face. But that requires more changes. It requires more conscious effort. You can easily get into cognitive overload. So certainly when I'm on the course, I will only deal with number 1 there, changing the face. If I'm training for long term and my path has got out of whack, I might go the second option there. Going back on the slide. So this, I don't want to go through this too much, but this is
a screenshot.
Yeah, exactly. Take a screenshot. These are the definitions, or at least my definitions of certain shots. So on the left column there, you have whether a shot finished on target, or whether it finished left, and whether it finished right. And then you have what was the start direction, what was the curvature, and then on the final column there is the definition. So say we take the very last row there, a shot that finishes right, it starts right, and it curves too much right, we'd call that a straight slice. So say it starts straight and then moves too much right, you call that a straight slice. So I determine the first word, straight, is where it starts, and then whether it finishes right or left would be a slice or fade or anything like that. These are some numbers. I mean, we're pretty much done with the presentation now, so this can be a little bit more conversation. We can start going into questions, but these were some fade numbers I hit, and this was a path that was 6 degrees left versus a path that was 6 degrees to the right. So I was hitting a big shape. I was testing what happens, what changes. My club head speed remained pretty much the same. It actually was faster with the fade for some strange reason, probably because I was using my body more. But the efficiency of the shot went down a little bit, and that's due to differences in angle of attack and dynamic loft. So there was more spin loft with the fade, which then resulted in these are some interesting things. If you ask why does a fade go shorter than a draw, for a single player, usually that is the case. And the reason why is it usually will have a little bit lower ball speed. There'll be higher backspin, and in most cases, I see a lower launch angle as well. That's not the same for everybody, but you can see my fade, and these are pretty big shapes. And so the big fade went about 8 yards shorter than the big draw. So if I was to minimize those shapes, there wouldn't be a huge difference between them. So it's not glaringly a massive issue for most players. Do we want to go into any questions?
Yeah. So listen, I think we've got some questions up already. Okay. So first question is from Stuart Reynolds. Hi, Stuart. Hello. Can club head speed have an influence on whether face direction or swing path is the dominant factor? So, for example, with a slower swing speed, the launch direction may be influenced by the face angle.
I believe so. I think at higher speeds, because the ball compresses more against the face, I think the path is going, don't quote me on this, but I believe the path is going to be slightly more influential. I think it's going to be very, very minimal though. I know that when loft is increased, the path is more influential on the start direction, and when loft is reduced with a putter, the face angle is actually about 90% or 87%. I think Dave Peltz wrote 87% of the start direction. So I think that it's more important to think of it in those terms, whether the loft affects the start direction more than speed itself.
Okay, so next question is from Lenny. I love questions like this. I have a pull fade ball fly. I want to hit the ball straight. Do I start with the path or the club face?
Well, you're going to have to change both. You can either do it one of two ways. If you're psychologically strong, you could probably start with the path, but you'll probably flare out a lot to the right. So sometimes players will unconsciously resist this because it's very hard to swing more in to out. It's very hard to swing to the right when your brain is already fighting a right shot. It's like your brain says, no, let's not do this. So probably from a teaching perspective, the route that I would go is I would tend to close that face first enough until they start hitting straight pulls left or even pull hooks. Yeah. And then we can start to tinker with the path. Then we can start to tinker with more in to out. And that might be as simple as even aiming your body a little bit more right at address, just because it's an easy fix. And then we can start to neutralize the body positions over time. So it's more of an evolution process that is more psychologically sound, because once we see that ball go left, it encourages us to say, okay, it's now safe to shift everything more to the right with path. So yeah, that's how I would go, and then usually flip it for a hooker.
And you know, I know you and I have talked a lot about this in the past as well. You know, one of the questions: why do most amateur golfers always tend to fade it or slice it? And I think we can kind of, I think you and I have narrowed it down in our many discussions where we used to work together, where it could just be the concept, right? Like, oh right, so to hit it dead straight, I got to swing this club like completely on the ball to target line and keep that face never leaving it. So
yeah, so that goes into concepts of swing, right? Rather than having a hula hoop around your body and then just tilting it forwards, and so more of an inclined plane. Yeah, lots of players think it's a Ferris wheel above the ball, and that can obviously influence face angle a lot and path. So sometimes it's swing concept, sometimes it's just an understanding. Players don't understand path or face, and intuitively that player who's hitting it right will swing more left because they don't understand that the ball goes the opposite way. So once they can understand how it's created, it helps a lot.
Yeah. And do you, I mean, I always find sometimes that it's very difficult for people to actually differentiate, you know, the path to the face, you know, so when they're trying to swing the path out to the right, they invariably kind of just open the club face and the path remains kind of the same, right? So it's a tough skill to manage.
Some players do, you have to deal with that on a player-to-player basis. I mean, I've had players where I ask them to just present the face open, and they present the face the exact same, but they swing more right or left. Learning how to do this, having numbers really helps there. So that's where having a TrackMan or something like that, you can isolate one individual number, and you can get them to focus on that. So you might just put up a path number on the screen and say, all right, let's make this negative, and then let's make this positive. All right, now throw a path and face and change around.
And this leads us to a good question then, right? Following on from what you just said, without a GC quad or any other launch monitor, how do I do the window drill? So that's from Nickel.
Okay, you can pick different targets on the range. So you could say, all right, I want it to be, you know, between these two targets. And that could be your straight shot, and then you could pick another window and say, well, let's do an equal amount to the right and then an equal amount to the left. So you can pick maybe 5 windows or so. So you've got a centered target, you've got 2 to the right, so that could be your small right and your big right, and you could have your small left and your big left. So you're creating windows of results instead of windows of club face presentation.
So if Nickel's listening, Adam's actually you've got a blog, haven't you, up on that? Kind of describing the windows where they can practice it.
I've certainly got stuff on my website. It might be in the paid programs. But
check out Adam's website. So that's I think that's all the questions there, Ad. I know we could probably go on for another 2 hours into other stuff.
I could.
But hang on, there's one last question here. Hang on 1 second, Adam. So we actually have a question from Adam. Hi, what, in your opinion, is a reasonable number for a path if someone wants to play a workable push draw? Would you go with path 3 degrees to the right or path 10 degrees to the right?
This is such a is a great question. It is laced with more philosophy than anything.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see the examples here. These were all Tor level proximities. So these are all about 5% from the pin. So, you know, within 10 yards on average at 180 yards or so. And I was 6 degrees either side. Now I've experimented with even 10 degrees either side, and I can still create Tor level proximities. However, it does, once you start to cut across it too much, it starts to affect things like ground contact and angle of attack a little bit too much. And you can also start to cut off a bit too much distance or get less consistency in other parameters. So personally, I like to see a 3-degree window either side. But if someone is 6 degrees in to out, if Bubba Watson came for a lesson and he's in 8 degrees out to in or something like that, then I'm just going to say, well, look, you're controlling your ball great, so let's not touch this. It's not necessary to touch this. I probably wouldn't even put numbers up for him. You don't want to cloud his mind with too much information.
No, absolutely not. So I think that's all the questions in, Adam. So I know we could kind of talk on for more, but
I'm just going to finish with a little. I'll finish with a little plug, a 1-minute plug, because this is basically the plug for the Laws of Golf, the Ledbetter University, and my.
That's right, your course, right? Yeah.
Yeah, this was only looking at you know, the path and face and strike and just looking at trajectory basically. But in the Laws of Golf module, I go through more of these in depth. It is very coach level information, although if you're an amateur geek, you will benefit from this as well. But I talk about the 4 performance parameters or factors on the left there in green. So we have max distance, how far you hit it. We have distance control, so what's the consistency of your distance. We have direction, so whether it finishes left or right. And the thing that we talked about today was trajectory, so how it gets there, whether it's high, low, or curving right or curving left. Those 4 things are created by the orange column, which are the ball flight laws. We looked today at launch angle and spin axis, but there are actually 5 ball flight laws. It's also launch direction, launch angle, ball speed, spin axis, and spin rate. So all those factors create the performance factors. And then which relates to the impact laws, the most important part of golf. So we've got face strike, ground contact, face direction, swing path, club speed, angle attack, dynamic loft. I show you how all of those things link together forwards and backwards so that you can make the most accurate diagnosis and improve that golfer quicker, because you know exactly what they need to improve in their performance, and you know you can backward reflect and know how to get there.
Adam, one last question, okay? This was a last minute question that just popped in from Peter Martin. I think this is quite an interesting one, which I know you'll like. So Peter Martin has asked, why have you not mentioned foot placement? This is an interesting one.
Foot placement will only affect the ball in relation to how it affects the path. So because this is the physics of ball shaping or shot shaping, because this is the physics, we're looking at the physics of impact. Your foot placement will actually make absolutely no difference to the direction unless being the key word, it affects the path or the face of the strike. So yes, in reality, I don't want people to say, oh, Adam said foot placement doesn't matter. No, it matters. It does matter, but only in relationship to how it changes impact.
And you know, a lot of my kind of elite players and tour pros, you know, some of them find it easier to draw the ball with the feet slightly open, and some of them prefer to fade the ball with the feet slightly closed. But that's all for their personal reasons, as you said, as to what they feel can deliver a better path for them as a sensation.
I like to say, if I got 100 golfers and I asked them to aim their feet more to the right, you would see the path shift to the right in those 100 golfers. However, if I aim left with my feet, I can swing in whatever direction I want. I could aim my feet left and swing left if I want, or right if I want. So the feet direction combined with all the other factors create it. And when we talk about what affects path, what affects face, and we've got a million factors.
Oh my God, we could be here for 2 days, right?
Exactly, yeah.
It's all in. But listen, Adam, I've enjoyed chatting with you again. And I'm sure the listeners have as well. For those of you viewing, Adam does have his course that is up on the Ledbetter University website, so I thoroughly recommend or suggest that you go and do it. All right. But Adam, stay safe, all the best, and I'll chat to you real soon. Thank you very much for your time.